At the edge of the known world, a mystery. How did an ancient people, so-called savages and cannibals, cross over 25 million square kilometers of open ocean in primitive canoes in one of the great expeditions of all time? It's baffled experts for centuries, but today scientists and adventurers are uncovering surprising new clues. Who they were, where they came from, and they may have reached the Americas hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus. A race of explorers. They conquered the Pacific long before the Europeans. Then, all traces of them and their homeland seemed to disappear. Until now. Who were these people? What happened to them? And what was their secret? Easter Island, a tiny speck in the Pacific, thousands of kilometers from anywhere. This famed island, known as Rapa Nui, is home to the mysterious statues. But the greatest mystery is the people themselves. How did they get here? Two young researchers are determined to answer that question.
We're trying to find answers to a large controversy about where the people on Easter Island originate from.
Who were the first people to live here? And how did they locate and settle in one of the most remote places on Earth, over 1,000 years ago?
By using DNA research, we hope to be able to uncover some of the mysteries that surrounds this island.
We're looking for the oldest people on the island and the most, what they say here, puro, somebody who has a genealogy that is Rapa Nui for many generations back on both sides, mother and father.
Taking genetic samples from the elders, they hope to find proof of their origins.
Su sangre está muy fuerte. Sí, qué bueno.
What we did now is take DNA from a woman whose last name indicates that she has a very interesting family tree. So it's important for us to be able to trace this.
El padre de tu padre.
Se llama Matías.
But it will take weeks for them to collect and test all the DNA samples. But right away, they're fascinated by what they hear from the elders. They say their forefathers came from a lost island continent known as Hiva, somewhere in the Pacific.
Nuestra historia dicen de que cuando el continente Hiva se hundió una explosión, desaparecieron y toda la gente emigraron.
Sterla and Eureka are determined to uncover the truth about those adventurers and their lost continent of Hiva. Together with a group of scientists, they intend to follow the trail back to see where it leads.
It's so fascinating to be here on the hunt. Right down here.
The elders say that this corner of the island is the starting point, where the first inhabitants arrived, led by a ruler called Hotu Matua.
We are standing on the beach where legend says that the very first king, Hotu Matua, arrived on the island.
And Hotu Matua, he originated from the lost continent, Hiva.
As the researchers continue their work, other experts are following the same trail across the Pacific, starting at a set of islands over 3,000 kilometers to the northwest. A remote chain known as the Marquesas, part of the vast territory of Polynesia. Like Easter Island, much of the Marquesan past remains a mystery.
Start in this corner, bring this down to 50, and then clean it clear across.
Okay. Dr. Barry Rowlett has been working here for the past 20 years. determined to find evidence of the lost Polynesian homeland.
On va continuer là.
Who were the ancient people who lived here? Could they have colonized the vast Pacific?
We're digging through the top deposit in order to get down to the richer cultural deposit, which has all of the artifacts left by the people who once lived here.
He and his team are excavating a remarkable coastal site, one of the oldest in East Polynesia, finding clues that date back over 1,000 years.
Something made out of iron.
Clues that just may shed light on the Easter Islanders and the Polynesian shrouded past.
Hey, Hio, c'est quoi ça?
Roller believes that the ancient clan that lived here did colonize the vast Pacific.
This is really nice. Middle to late 19th century.
And evidence like this bone ornament is helping him make the case.
This one's going in the museum.
But his theory goes against everything experts believed for years. The first reports from European travelers in the 1700s spoke of lush green islands with a dark side. A land of tattooed cannibals, primitives who carried the skulls of their enemies as trophies. Marquesas was labeled one of the most savage places on Earth. Its people, simple barbarians.
We're going to go down here and across the river.
The most controversial element of ancient Marquesan life took place deep in the jungle. Religious ceremonies, notorious for human sacrifice.
When a priest called for a human victim, then the people would go to a neighboring valley and just grab whoever they could.
These were offerings, brutal and highly ritualized, known to all the clansmen here. The meat of the victim is consumed by the chiefs and the priests, not as food, but as a kind of ancient communion.
It was not cannibalism to feed the population. It was in a highly ceremonial and religious context.
It's no wonder early explorers saw the Marquesans as savages. They had almost no written language, no history, and by that time they were isolated, barely traveling at all. But Dr. Rohlert is finding clues that the Marquesans' ancestors were more sophisticated, more civilized than anyone imagined.
We're going to cross the river here.
Centuries of thick jungle growth hide the secrets of that civilization.
Joseph, on va débrousser un peu? Vaitahu was one of the most densely inhabited valleys in the past.
There's evidence of an intricate society with a complex social order of priests and chiefs.
So here we have the residence of one of the chiefs. This is the retaining wall of the chief's platform. Look at the size of the boulders in the base of the wall. I'm 6 foot. This wall must be a good 8 feet tall. It's one of those cases where size really does matter, because the size of the stone and the size of the walls was a reflection of the status of the person living here.
The most powerful chiefs command the construction of massive stone platforms known as paipai, foundations for housing and public ceremonies, all part of an elaborate, well-ordered communal structure. For a young man growing up here, the first rite of passage comes in the form of an intricate tattoo. The evidence shows that tools made of fish and human bone or shark's teeth were used to force ink into the skin. Pigment for the tattoo is made from ash of a cooked tree nut. Until death, the story of his every battle will be tattooed into his flesh. For this young man, a remarkable journey is beginning. Deep in the Marquesan jungle, Roland makes a surprising discovery.
So, on va aller trouver le pétroglyphe. Ah, c'est là. This is it. This is it. Oh, here are the petroglyphs. Voilà, tu vois les deux petroglyphs.
Here in French Polynesia is a startling echo from Easter Island. Petroglyphs and large tikis, like the great statues there.
This is one of the few petroglyph sites that we know of in the valley. Tikis and petroglyphs are images that represented deified ancestors. The head was the most sacred part of the body. So what you see here is just the representation of the eyes of the tiki. These petroglyphs are really interesting because they're so similar to the ones that we find on Easter Island.
Other than Easter Island, the Marquesas are one of the only few places on Earth where you'll find this kind of giant tiki. It's an intriguing link, the first hint of a Polynesian homeland, but the hunt for proof is just the beginning.
Battle of the Pacific sponsors History Defined on National Geographic Channel.
On an isolated string of islands in the Pacific, Dr. Barry Rowlett and his team are trying to find evidence to support a controversial theory.
We're going to bring all the squares down to 75.
For centuries, scientists believed that ancient Polynesians were too primitive to navigate the vast Pacific and colonize other islands.
Earlier scientists and archaeologists believed that it was very difficult to travel across the ocean, and so that once Polynesians reached islands such as the Marquesas, people were isolated with no further voyaging.
The Polynesians were seen as accidental settlers blown by chance across the waters, marooned on their islands. But Rowlett believes they were much more sophisticated.
We're going to call this layer C because it's starting to get darker there, we can see already.
That they intentionally made long round-trip journeys for trade and colonization.
We're looking for archaeological evidence of inter-island voyaging and exchange.
It's a fascinating theory, but he needs physical evidence to prove it.
Let's see what you got.
What do you think about this?
This is unusual. It's a marine animal.
So far, he hasn't found anything definitive. Only certain artifacts are useful as a window into the past, and Rowlett doesn't have what he needs. Until...
Jackpot? Yeah. What do you have?
Fish hook.
Oh, beautiful. Wow, jackpot. This is a pearl shell fish hook. Try to clean it off. It's unusual that we find an unbroken fish hook like this in the excavation. So I'm just recording the location of that fish hook we found.
The fish hook is made of pearl shell, and that's their first major clue.
It's quite rare because it grows best in lagoons, and there are no lagoons in the Marquesas.
This fish hook must have come from somewhere else. But the closest island with lagoons harboring this